Let me get started. My name is Janine Callie. I'm with the Reston Library. So welcome to tonight's program. It's part of our Running and Wellness workshop on the fundamentals of falling. Reston Library is thrilled to be partnering with the Reston Runners Group. It's a new partnership for us. We are very excited. We hope to continue providing this type of programming in the months ahead. So stay tuned for May's event. We'll get information up on that soon. And I'll email everyone who's sort of on this meeting and just let you know when registration opens for that. But before I get started, I'm just going to go over very briefly some logistics of the program tonight. We will be having a presentation by our guest speakers. And once they are finished with their presentation, we'll do question and answers and comments. But since we have a good amount of participants tonight, it'll be good if we do that through the chat feature. So if you don't mind just holding your questions and comments till the end and just put those in chat. We'll filter those through for our guests to answer. I think that'll just help the meeting run a little bit more smoothly. So let's get started. I'm going to first hand the program over to Caitlin McBride. She is a member of the Reston Runners Group board. It was great. You know, we talked about we had brainstorming on what to do with these programs, and Caitlin really took charge of this and is the reason we have these great speakers here tonight. So Caitlin, I'm going to turn it over to you so you could talk more about your group and then introduce our speakers.
All right, thank you. Welcome everyone. I'm glad to see so many people here. I want to thank Janine. Just we're really excited to partner with the library and hope that this will encourage running and hope it'll encourage people to visit the library and join Reston Runners. If you are not a Reston Runners member and you live around Reston, check us out at restonrunners.org. We're a friendly community of walkers and runners of all different abilities. We have a lot of events normally when it's not COVID. We have group runs and walks all throughout the week. And we also offer special programs like the women's training program to get women into exercise and running. We have a summer interval training to do speed work. Another program we offer is for kids. It's called Youth in Motion. That's in the summer. And we're excited to start offering those again soon. Yes, and I don't think I said, I'm on the board. I'm one of the members at large. So hope to see you all at some runs soon. And next I'll introduce our speakers for tonight. Kelly Nottingham and Paul Ellington are with us. And thank you two so much for volunteering to do this. Kelly and Paul are from the Virginia Therapy and Fitness Center in Reston on Sunrise Valley. So if you need a physical therapist, check them out. They're both graduates of Shenandoah University, where they got their Doctor of Physical Therapy. They both are also, I noticed, Hokies. And they both have a passion for sports rehab and medicine. And they're going to teach us all about how to fall a little better so we have less injuries. So thank you, Kelly and Paul, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for having us. We have a little PowerPoint presentation that I was going to share with you all so we can go through it together. Then if I remember how to actually make this. Oh, here we go. All right, can everybody, I hope, see this okay? It's a little good, Paul?
Yep, looks great.
Okay, thank you. All right, so yes, thanks for inviting us to talk to you guys a little bit about the fundamentals of falling and yeah, to hopefully prevent some injuries. And I'm going to go over some of the things that some of our objectives. So tips on how to avoid falling, understanding some of the common reasons for a fall so that maybe you can make a better decision about like when a good time to run is for you, or taking time to practice some falling techniques. Paul is going to show you a way to do that in a safe environment, and then how to assess your injury after falling to figure out if you are safe to keep going or if you need to see a specialist or have some rest, and then also some exercises that we as physical therapists give athletes and runners all the time to improve balance and hopefully prevent some falls from happening. So some tips to avoid falling. Keeping your head up and just looking out in front of you is going to be key. So just making sure there aren't any hazards or changes in the road surface or trail surface that are coming up ahead. So that way, if you just have something that you need to look out for or step over. Tying your shoes well. So I have this little video here too. There's a certain way that you can tie your shoes for runners that hopefully will keep them from unknotting. I mean, double knotting is also a good way to go too. They shouldn't be your shoes shouldn't just be slipping on. You should have, as a runner, general rule, they should be pretty tight and snug anyway. I'm sorry. Hey. Keeping your eyes a few feet in front of you also when you're trail running is important. Like, you're probably not going to be able to do the 10 to 20 feet in front of you. You want to do a little bit closer just to look for tree roots or rocks or things like that. And then also having trail specific shoes is helpful too, because they have a little bit better grip. So I'm going to play the video really quick.
Kelly, I can't hear anything. I don't know if it's muted on your end or not.
Pause it. I might not have shared how, like, my I don't know how to share my volume to my computer, so that's probably why that's happening.
Enable computer audio.
Kelly, if you unshare your screen and then you click the share screen button again, there's a little box to check in the bottom left-hand corner that says share sound.
Oh, I see it now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we will try again. I keep going back. There we go. Okay.
I still don't hear it, Kelly.
I think it might be your headphones.
That's why. Okay. Let's try that. Sorry.
There you go.
Working now?
We have sound.
From there, you cross the laces over and pass down through the loop. So feed into those loops. From here, you pull this nice and tight and just watch those loops start to lock down around the shoe. So you can pull that as tight as you need to, which keeps that part of the shoe really snug and wrapped around the foot. From there, you just tie your shoe off as you would every single day.
Not if you guys didn't feel like you got a good, we basically just did how to tie a heel lock. So that's what we're gonna keep. We can always share that too with you guys later. Keep that out for you. Most common reasons for falls.
Running downhill, it's going to be a little bit more sketchy, typically, like especially if it's a trail, of course, if there's like loose gravel or rock or anything like that. But also, your feet can kind of get away from you. So just being a little bit more careful when you're going downhill is going to be key. Some unstable surfaces again. So like if there's any loose gravel or if there's any step offs, just trying to be aware of your surroundings. Distractions, headphones, looking at your phone, things like that while you're running can obviously cause you to lose focus and possibly trip and fall. Fatigue and dehydration, so it's important to be hydrated before your run, making sure that you're kind of in your best mental state. And then different weather conditions, so if it's slippery out there because it's maybe icy or just wet conditions, so maybe on those days, if you feel a little bit unsure about those kind of conditions, then maybe those are days that you kind of hit the treadmill or do the gym strengthening, or even go for a Peloton ride or something like that. So some other reasons for falls, race specific. So probably a lot of you have done some races, competed. So
it does get crowded, obviously, when you first start the race. So that limits our ability to kind of look ahead at where our feet are going to be. So I know I've had a fall that way.
So just trying to give yourself some space.
And then wet pavement near any hydration stops at those races, that can be
a hazard and could slip that way. So you are actually out on a run and you find yourself in a position where you are about to fall or you are falling. The most common human reaction is to put your hand out to try to catch yourself. And as physical therapists, we would say you don't want to do that. That's you're kind of setting yourself up for what we call a thoosh injury, which is falling on an outstretched hand. And that could lead to a hand injury, a wrist, elbow, shoulder, could even lead into the neck type injury. We see like shoulder dislocations, we see fractures because of that. So yeah, catching yourself with a longer stride or a lunge of some sort would be your best bet. But if that's not possible, you really want to do what we would call like a stop, drop, and roll, where you just try to cover your head with your arms and kind of lean into it with your shoulder a little bit. So, you don't want to hit your head either. Paul's going to do a demonstration for you guys, and you guys can feel free to try it out with them too if you have the space for it. But yeah, we'll get a little bit more into like what that could look like for you guys. But I mean, all in all, like if it comes down to hitting your head or, stopping yourself with your hand, obviously like put your hand out. But if you can find another way to try to get around that type of injury, because that's probably going to lead you, you're probably going to need some physical therapy or something after that. Right. So this is when I lead you into Paul, or let Paul take over.
So I'm going to try and do this the same way and that all the audio kind of carries over, just because this video is generally going to be what we're going to hopefully practice if you all have room, like Kelly said. Let me see here real quick, just kind of, Kelly, if you don't mind telling me, if I click this, just make sure that there's some audio. Can you hear that before I go ahead and go through this whole presentation?
No, can't hear it.
You guys are all shaking. No. All right. So let's see. We're going to go through the same exact thing. All right. Bringing it across in front of your knee. Did that do anything or no? Everyone's still shaking there.
I could hear them. Could others hear it? It sounds a little low though, the volume.
I could hear it a little bit and then I can't hear it anymore.
Okay, well, if you all want, let's just go ahead. So in the sake of time, I'll re-demonstrate this anyway, and I can kind of walk you through what he's doing. But the gist of this is, as you can see here, I'll kind of scroll along with you. We're going to get down onto a lunge position. I'll just actually mute this. And so if you go one way or another, some of us have dominant versus non-dominant hands as far as which way we want to fall. If you get both hands down to the ground, kind of from a lunge position, as this guy is currently demonstrating, it's going to allow us to kind of put one side of our weight towards the other. So whether you would prefer rolling to the right or rolling to the left is personally just a preference. From there, all we're really doing is tucking our chin and kind of thinking of that stop, drop, and roll maneuver, whereas you can see he rolls over on his right shoulder. So we're going to roll from the right shoulder and then down towards our left butt cheek. There's no right or wrong answer as far as which one comes down first. And that's all he's demonstrating right here is basically we're going to get our right shoulder down first, come across at a diagonal towards that left butt cheek. You can do it in the reverse order. The idea here is that we're just using the fleshier part of our body instead of falling on a really bony prominence, such as our wrist or elbow. That's much more likely going to get injured. If we fall on our shoulder, kind of our shoulder blade and back area, it's just a lot more surface area. So we distribute the force of that fall across a much broader spectrum. So the idea here is that we're just giving ourselves a lot more cushioning, and then he'll demonstrate one more time. It's kind of a roll, finish a little bit sideways. So I'll do my best. That's the reason I'm kind of in my basement right here. So I'm gonna just kind of walk you guys through this one more time. So you'll see me from this position. I'm gonna come back here. So if I were to fall forward from this position, I would basically come down and put my hands here, but notice I'm already falling down. From there, if my left hand is the outermost hand, I'm going to tuck my chin down to the right. And from there, it's simply just a roll like that, if that makes sense. So if any of you all are in a safe space, you know, I chose my basement because it's the only part I have carpeted. You don't want to tear your back up, but just find a place that has enough space where you know you're not going to get injured practicing this. The idea is that essentially we're going to come from this walking position, just drop down into a lunge. Again, if you want to reverse it, if my left leg is kind of outmost, that same kind of diamond. And then from here, since my right arm is the outermost arm, I'm just going to roll to the right. Again, it shouldn't hurt. The progression of this is from a standing position, come down into a lunge, pick which side you're going to roll over. From a walking position, this is a little bit of a riskier maneuver. So I would advise everyone to practice this just from a lunge position, plenty of open space. You're not going to get injured. And then I'm going to walk across the screen and basically show you what that would look like in a little bit more of a real-time scenario. So if I'm walking from off screen, I trip, and it just kind of looks like that, where immediately you come down, you tuck, and you roll. It's simply kind of a stop, drop, and roll maneuver. Again, the idea here is that we're not going to fall on any big prominence. So as Kelly mentioned, the Fuchs injury, falling on an outstretched hand, we're much more likely to hurt the surface of our hand, skin our elbows. I don't know if that shows on camera, but I've got scars to prove that that's not the way you want to fall. The idea here is, again, we're just using kind of the medial prominence back here, a nice flat surface of our back, and then rolling onto our hip. So, you know, if you all are comfortable doing that at home, I think we're going to be able to share this video through Reston Library's YouTube channel. So you can find these kind of as a resource if you want to practice in a safe space. I would recommend doing it. Just like everything, if you don't practice, you can't expect it to naturally happen. So from a logistics standpoint, it's really imperative that you practice falling. Otherwise, it's going to be that natural reaction, and it's going to be full brace, you know, hitting your hands. It's your entire body weight coming through a place that isn't meant to really weight bear per se. So that's kind of my spiel, if you will, on practice falling. The critical part, and this is where kind of the inner physical therapist within us, we had to tell you guys, you know, once you've fallen, really, unless you're in a race and you're about to win the race of your life, please don't jump right back up. If there's any concern that you might have injured something, stay on the ground, slowly assess the situation. So the most common and safest way to do this, I like to think, is start from the bottom up. So chances are you might have rolled an ankle. That could have been why you slipped, or you might have, you know, hit your toe on something. So just slowly wiggle your toes, make sure that doesn't bother you, roll your ankles around, circles, bend and straighten your knees a few times. Hopefully it didn't come to this, but if you are bleeding, sometimes you need to use a sock as a tourniquet. If you're out in the woods trail running and you're all by yourself, sometimes it really does become kind of an emergency situation. Hopefully none of you kind of come across that, but if you need to, a sock does make for a great tourniquet. All you simply do, tie it around wherever that place is above where the blood is coming from. So if it's your knee, tie it a little bit above there, tie it nice and tight. And then obviously, if you have a phone, call somebody. If you're running with a friend, have them help you up. And if you're okay to continue running, don't jump right back into it. Stand up nice and slow, same thing, kind of assess the situation, ease back into a walk, slowly start jogging. And if that's okay, you're probably okay to carry on. If you decide, hey, this really hurt and I am concerned, stop the run. If you can, get someone to drive you back home. If you need to walk home, wherever you are, just do it safely. And the general rule of thumb is that if you had to stop the run, you're probably going to be sore the next day. So give yourself a day, probably up to 3 days. If after 3 or 4 days you still have some lingering pains and it just doesn't feel quite right, come into VTFC. We would love to evaluate you, make sure it's nothing bigger than just a bruise or something like that. But, unfortunately, it's the nature of the beast when we start running. If we fall, we do have the risk of getting seriously injured. And the earlier you can get to a medical professional after a serious injury, the better the outcome typically is. So if it really does come to that, please don't be afraid to say, I fell and I do need some help. Hopefully, a little bit more optimistically here, we can help you guys prevent falls in the future. So the biggest thing with a fall is that it typically comes from a lack of balance or a lack of strength, probably a combination of both. So as we get older, our balance, it declines, as does our strength. So unfortunately, we need to do something about these types of things. Otherwise, it's just bound to happen. So the strength component, we'll get to a little later. For now, we're just going to talk a little bit more about balance. When we're walking, we spend about 40% of our time on one leg. Technically, the definition of running is when we no longer have both feet on the ground at any one time. So you're basically running from foot to foot, where the entire act of running, you're either on one foot or you're through the air. So single limb balance is key. Single limb just means we have one foot on the ground, and that's what's supporting our entire body weight. So we really need to be able to do that and do it well if we want to be able to safely run. So some simple balance exercises. Again, if you all are at a, kind of at home or in a safe place here, we can go ahead and demonstrate that. All that's going to look like is single limb balance is something as simple as standing and raising one leg off the ground. You should be able to do this relatively easily. If you're a runner, it shouldn't be, swaying all over the place, loosey-goosey. The idea is that we're just able to comfortably do this. If you want to challenge yourself a little more, a simple recommendation would be do it while you're brushing your teeth. It gives you a distraction. You're kind of moving your arm around, but you should still be able to simply stand, be distracted, move around a little bit. That's exercise number 1. Exercise number 2 is going to be tightrope walking. So I'm going to try and let you all see kind of what my feet are doing here. You don't need to have an actual tightrope. In fact, I would not recommend that as a starting position. We simply call standing like this tandem stance, and that you have one foot in front of the other. So if you can, let's see, there we go. So this is tandem stance. Just standing like this is generally going to be pretty easy. If you want, add motion, and this is what we mean by tightrope walking. Go forward, go backward. Again, if you wanted to make it a little bit more challenging, you can do, hands to your nose, things like that. You're just adding distractions such that you're challenging multiple systems of the brain at the same time. We'll get into the single leg squats for strength, but just a quick little breakdown of how our balance works is we have 2 primary systems. We have the vestibular and the visual system. So our visual system is exactly what it sounds like, in that we use our eyes to perceive the world around us. It allows us to see, am I tilting in relation to what I am seeing? So when we're standing, we can see, oh, I'm tilting to the side, I need to correct that. A simple way to challenge your balance at home is to do something with your eyes closed. Obviously, if you're fully closing your eyes, you take away the visual system. The second system I mentioned is that vestibular system. You might have heard about the systems within our inner ear. It's basically like 3 hula hoops and different kind of combination of orientations where there's fluid in there, and our brain is able to perceive the difference of how those fluids within our inner ear are moving. That allows us to see what position we are in, even without the visual system being engaged via our eyes. So if you wanted to challenge yourself a little bit more, a simple exercise again, stand on one leg and then close your eyes. You'll see me naturally start to sway a little bit more just by simply closing my eyes. All that does is it makes me have to hone in on that vestibular system and really practice becoming a little bit more aware of what my body is doing. So those would be some really basic but simple exercises you can do to try and improve balance at home. I'm going to lower this just a little bit, and then we'll talk a little bit more about some strength. So this is a good combination for runners. It's both strength and balance. So a single leg squat. This is essentially what we're doing when we're running, right? Is we're basically going from one leg to another, doing squats where we're pushing our body forward. This is obviously more of an up and down orientation, but you're going to feel it in that quad, maybe a little bit in the glute as well. So that's a good way just to start some strength training that is also in the kind of balance department. And then the second big muscle group that you need to be concerned about making sure you strengthen would be your calves. So you can either hold onto a wall if you have a kitchen counter or something, feel free to grab onto that. Stand on one leg. We call these heel raises. That's the second component to running, is as we're doing that kind of shifting back and forth, we're not only pushing through the knee, but we're also lifting from that foot. So that's kind of that pushing ourselves off motion. So just simply, standing at a countertop, doing a bunch of heel raises on both sides. If you're a runner, you should be able to do this pretty easily. And if it feels really difficult, that's probably something that you should be focusing a little bit more on, trying to develop a little bit more strength. So single calf raises, single leg squats, those are going to be more your leg strength. The tightrope walking, standing on one foot while brushing your teeth, that's a little bit more balance. And like I said, progress to doing these with your eyes closed or different head positions. Again, the head positions just challenges that vestibular system a little bit more. Fun little video for you guys to kind of summarize. At the end of the day, what we want for all of you is to absolutely just be safe. We want you to enjoy your time running. Please don't end up like this person in the video. Hopefully you can hear it because it's rather hilarious. No audio.
The video's on mute in YouTube.
Yep.
Oh, there you go. Does this help?
Yes. Oh.
So that's a perfect example of what not to do, in that you're pushing yourself out in the conditions. She's out running in the snow. She falls on her back. She grabs her back because it appears as though she's in pain. She doesn't really assess if anything's wrong. She just jumps right back up and keeps running. Hopefully, if you take anything from this presentation, it is that you run within your own safety, within your own comfort levels, and then you figure out, do I need to work on balance? Do I need to work on strength? And if there's anything that you really have concerns about, come and see us at VTFC and we would love to help you out. So I guess at this time, if you all want to either take down our email address, we would love to answer any questions if you have them now, or feel free to write our email addresses down and send us a question that comes to mind later after this.
Yeah, thank you, both Kelly and Paul. Some really good advice. I love now I'll have something to do while I'm brushing my teeth. I have something to practice. So besides brushing my teeth and flossing, hopefully I'll be strengthening my muscles and becoming more balanced. But so if folks have questions, specific questions, we have time for some Q&A. So if you don't mind sort of putting that in chat, we could filter through those.
Some people asked for the video link, if you wouldn't mind sharing that.
Is it the one that's
on it right now.
21?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'll send it right now.
Thank you.
So here's a question that came in. Any
Oh,
tips if you are about to fall going up or down the stairs?
My initial reaction on that is that if you are either A, concerned that it's going to happen, or B, that it's happened in the past, use the handrail. That's going to be your best bet. So instead of falling, again, kind of on that outstretched hand, if you're walking up the stairs, you don't necessarily have to be pulling yourself with the railing, but when you immediately start to lose your balance, you already have your hand on something that will support you. So if it is an issue as far as, stairs up or down, I would recommend using a handrail.
Caitlin, you could ask that one.
I was wondering when you were demonstrating the falling, going into the lunge position, how do you protect your knee when you're doing that? Like when you're running and I don't know, I was just imagining my knee slamming down.
So my initial is when you're here, you don't necessarily want to slam. It's in a quicker motion. It's almost as though you're going to avoid that lunge. So it's just like that, where your knee doesn't necessarily hit the ground. You're basically catching yourself in a lunge position. And just as you would hit the ground, that's where you're going to tuck and roll. So it's not a big slam the knee down and then roll, if that makes sense. And again, I know this is a rather difficult thing, so just practice in the safety of your home. If you decide that is not the way you want to fall, the best thing is going to be just kind of roll over onto your side. The most likely injury is going to be those wrists.
Yeah, is it sort of a question I have? I also ski, so I've taken some falls on the slopes, but I think a lot of times you get more injured when you like try to stop the fall, as opposed to like what you're trying to do is to like fall into it.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
any tips?
Unfortunately, it's
embrace
not
the fall.
it's not the initial reaction though, which is
Yeah.
why, I mean, again, like Kelly said, we call it a foosh. Like if you go up to any physical therapist and say, oh, I have a foosh injury, they're going to say, how'd you fall? It's just that common. You fall on an outstretched hand because that's the initial gut reaction that we have. And unfortunately, unless you practice another way of falling, that's the best resource you have. So it's how you're going to fall, which is why it's pretty important to try and practice if you're comfortable doing it.
Good advice. Oh, do you see that question? It's I'm just reading these out because just so it's on the recording. So Mary asks, do you have any tips on how to strengthen your ankles?
Actually, a few of the ones that Paul demonstrated or talked about are great for your ankles too. So the calf raises, that's even working on your ankle mobility too, dynamically. And then also the single leg balance, that's working on your ankle strength too, because you're basically working on your proprioception and the tiny little muscles, the intrinsics in our feet that balance us, but also they're great for like even just like working on your arch support and things like that too. Some other good ones, I mean, working on a squat like Paul was doing, another good one. If you want to throw any out there too, Paul, any other on the top?
No, like you said, it's it's practical to practice the way you're going to play. So knowing the population of this is a runners club, it's pretty imperative that you have single leg stability. So that single leg balance, you might notice that your ankle starts to get a little shaky. And those are the muscles Kelly just mentioned as far as the intrinsics that kind of support the foot and ankle. You're going to be working those muscles while doing single limb balance or a single limb squat. Both are going to get those muscles firing and get you a little bit better, as she said, proprioception, which is basically just your awareness of your body, knowing, am I about to roll my ankle? And then the body's reaction of, okay, let me turn these muscles on. You're basically building that pathway between the brain and the muscles by practicing standing on one leg for a prolonged period of time.
Okay, good. The next question that came in is, how do you work on your toe strength? bunions are an issue, I think, in relationship to my toe strength.
Yeah, I guess the first thing that pops in my mind with bunions is, maybe you need to look a little bit more closely at your shoes, your footwear. If you need a bigger or wider toe box, because sometimes that tends to be a lot of the reason why people even develop bunions, is that their toes are just too crammed in to the foot. Especially ladies' shoes are definitely, we're guilty of that, their heels and such. So just looking at that, we can I definitely have some recommendations for different shoes that I think have a wider toe box and can help with that. As far as exercises to help with that, just doing some toe yoga is something that we do in the clinic. You could probably Google search that, just some different strategies to be able to lift, for instance, only your big toe while all your other toes stay flat on the floor. And then being able to do that with every single toe. That's one way to kind of strengthen your muscles in your toes too.
All right. Any other questions? We've gotten a lot of comments just saying thank you for the presentation, which is really nice.
Yeah.
I guess another question I have is, does stretching just prevent injuries, or do they help prevent falls? If you're tight in I guess your running gait may be different than it usually is. Does that contribute to it?
I don't know that it would necessarily cause a fall, but as you alluded to, it definitely alters the mechanics of how you run. The biggest thing I would say is that if you don't have enough mobility, for example, to run in an upright position, you might be leaning a little bit more forward, and something as simple as that can just change the distribution of your weight. So if you're always leaning a little bit forward, you're going to be a little more likely to fall. So I guess you can make that comparison, and that a particular mobility restriction could make you a little bit more predisposed. But I don't know that there would be any specifics without going through an actual evaluation. Just the mechanics are a rather personal thing, because most people aren't perfect examples of mobility, but we figure it out. The body's a pretty resilient structure, and that it'll figure out a way to run, even if it has some type of limiting factor. So we'll usually compensate for one thing by putting another thing out of balance, just to try and balance ourselves back out. So mobility is critical, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it causes falls.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Kelly and Paul. That was just a great presentation, I know.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Definitely new things for me. So thank you.
Anytime.
Our pleasure.
Yes. Yeah, thank you everyone for the presentation. We've learned a lot tonight, I think. Thank you both Kelly and Paul. And again, folks, if you have any questions, you could email them, or if you're in need of some therapy, please visit them at Virginia Therapy and Fitness Center. Caitlin, thank you very much for helping with this presentation and getting it organized and getting this partnership started. Right now, I'm hoping, we'll continue these virtually, but at some point, once the library is open for in-person programming, we'd love to continue that as well, and maybe start some runs from the library.
Yeah,
that would be
definitely.
yeah, that'd be a nice option.
Yeah.
So thank you.